ready. All right, super. Thank you. All right, welcome to the Library Advisory Board for November 18th. We're calling the meeting to order at 4:04 p.m. I'm Adrienne Doman-Calkins. I'm the library manager, and I typically don't facilitate the meeting, but our chair is absent, and today is our day to actually appoint a vice chair. So I will be going through the agenda here. I'm going to share my screen, and we're welcoming a lot of new members today. One moment while I bring that up. So I have our agenda. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, super, thank you. Okay, and so we'll go around and do a roll call and short introductions. I already introduced myself. I think it's in a different order on your screen, but for me, the next person to my left is Lily. Lily, could you go ahead and introduce yourself and just tag the next person next to you?
Hi, my name's Lily Fairman, and I'm the new high school representative. I think the person next on my screen is Crystal Garcia.
Sorry, can you hear me now? I was having trouble unmuting. Yeah. I'm Crystal Garcia. I'm Adult Services Librarian 2 here for the Sherwood Library. And I've worked here for about 13 years now. And I attend these meetings to take notes for Adrienne. Let's see, the person, I think I have Jane next.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jane Van Kuren, and I just got reappointed to this position, and I'm pretty happy about it. Okay, and I'm not following what direction? Clockwise, counterclockwise?
Just anybody. Okay. I think it all shows up differently on the screen, but if you tag someone,
okay. All right.
Keep the flow going.
Renee Browse. Hi, Renee.
Hey, Jane. So hi, guys. I'm Renee Browse. I'm your council liaison. Oh, I gotta tag somebody. So the person that's right above me is actually, oh, she just moved. So now it's Danny. Danny's right ahead of me.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny Sticka, and I'm a new board member. And I will, I'll go with Fritz.
Hi.
Hi, Fritz.
I'm Fritz Kalashevsky. I'm a brand new member, and I'm the rural representative. And I'll pass it off to Vishwas.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vishwas Sethi. I'm a brand new member of the board, the advisory board.
Welcome.
I'll tag. Who else is left?
I guess me.
Oh. Right.
Is it me? Hi, I'm Melanie Dobson. I'm not sure. What am I supposed to say? Something specific, Adrienne?
If you just introduce yourself and say your name and your role as a member. Yeah.
I'm Melanie Dobson, and I'm a board member. I've been a member for most of this year. I think all of this year, actually. It started last year. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. So I stopped.
Did Steve introduce himself?
Oh, no, you're right. Thank you. Yes, Steve, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? If you can turn your camera back on, that's great, but otherwise that's fine as well.
I have it on. If you can't see me, let me know. Maybe it's just we got so many people in our Brady bunch right now.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Steve Remsen, board member, now veteran board member, I guess, with Melanie. We've both been here for about a year. So yeah, thanks much. Excited to be here again.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Did we get everyone that time? I think so. Okay. Pardon me. So the next thing on the agenda are there any changes to the agenda? I don't have anything, but does anybody else have anything that we should add?
Well, I want to say that I miss sitting in the conference room, and there's hot tea and coffee. And sometimes you have snacks. And so it is so wet outside, but I'm thankful to be in my apartment, and I'm ready to do what we need to do here today. But I do miss the conference room.
Yes, yes. One day we'll be back there.
Yes, we will.
Thank you, Jane. All right, and then the next order of business is to approve the minutes. So this would be for people who attended the minutes, the people who are brand new appointments today, which actually, I'm sorry, actually, let me back up. I want to specifically call attention to all the wonderful new members that we have. And so we have, if you could raise your hand or wave too, that would be great. So we have Fritz, we have Vishwas, we have Danny, and we have Jane as a reappointment, and we have Lily, all brand new today. Thank you so much for joining us. And it just feels really good to have, we're nearly a full board again. We're typically 9 members. We have 8 members filled. If anybody out there is listening and says, this looks like a great group, I wonder how I can apply. Well, you can go to sherwoodoregon.gov/library. And you will find under the About the Library section about the Library Advisory Board, or you could email me and find out. Okay, which then leads us to approval of the minutes. Pardon me. So for September 4th, 2020, the minutes were linked there in the agenda. There were a few things I wanted to mention that were different. They are noted in there, but because it was September and these days everything is changing so very quickly, there was a lot that had already changed. And of course, I did email all of you today that we had changes just this week. I'll talk about those later in the meeting. But in terms of this, we thought, we thought that we would be perhaps letting people into the library by now. That obviously hasn't happened. We actually are pulling back on our in-person services and trying to figure out a way to do them in an even safer way. And then we also had a big discussion about quarantining, and new data had come out right before our meeting last time, and then we've adjusted again. So right now we are quarantining a minimum of 24 hours, but what it actually looks like in practice is about 2.5 days. So otherwise, for the 3 members that were in attendance, well, I should say the 3 members, Randy's not here. He already put his vote in via email, and he said that he would approve. So that leaves Stephen and Melanie. If one of you would be willing to make a motion to adopt the minutes, if you feel like they're ready to go, and then the other one could second, unless there's any discussion.
I'll approve that.
Second.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. So all 2 of you in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And then we had Randy's, of course. So motion passes. The minutes are approved. And let's see. So that leads us to our next agenda item. So at a previous meeting, we talked about the vice chair nominations, and we had a very small membership at that time, and Jane was seeking reappointment, but there were some delays in that actually going through, and as we were waiting to do other interviews, and we had Randy as already as chair, and Melanie and Stephen as being fairly new. Jane was actually the next most senior member, and she expressed interest, but she wasn't actually qualified at that time because she hadn't been reappointed yet.
I was disenfranchised.
Well, I didn't use that word. So
I did. You gotta go through the rules. You have to.
You can't be vice chair if you're not a member. So now you're a member, and Randy gave his vote too that he would approve a nomination of Jane as vice chair. And this is open for all members to vote on. If you feel like this is weird, I only just met Jane a few moments ago in an online meeting, you certainly can abstain, and that's not weird at all. But so are there any other nominations besides Jane, I guess we would say, for vice chair? And
Melanie, did you express interest as well? Do you want to throw your hat in too?
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're muted, but I saw a no and a thumbs up.
No, I vote for Jane.
Jane, would you like to say anything? Do you want to accept the nomination?
Well, when we talked about this before, Randy says I'm not going to be absent very much, but it's true. I mean, he isn't. He runs a beautiful meeting. We start on time, we end on time, we have agendas, and things go pretty smoothly. So you can count on Randy, but he is a pretty important person taking care of us in this pandemic. So we've got to be understanding. He has responsibilities you can't imagine. So. But yes, I accept it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And so then I believe the next step is there a motion to appoint Jane as vice chair of the Library Advisory Board, and a second? Or any discussion? Well, gosh, I should ask if there's any discussion. Any discussion? Okay. A motion.
I motion to appoint Jane as vice chair.
All right. Thank
Second.
you, Melanie. All right. And a second from Stephen. Thank you. All those in favor? Anybody can vote.
Aye.
Just, you know. All right. I'm not actually voting. I'm just demonstrating. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. And were there any abstentions? I couldn't quite catch it. It's fine to abstain if you want to. No? Any against? No? Okay, so motion passes. Yay. Jane, you are our new vice chair. Congratulations. Thank you for stepping up. Oh, wonderful. And the vice chair position is a one-year appointment. In our board, we've specifically set out that it doesn't mean you have to become chair next time, but certainly that's a natural progression if people are interested. Anyone can be chair or vice chair without having to do one or the other in our group. Anything else you want to say, Jane, about vice chair? We'll officially pass it on to you and you can facilitate the rest of the meeting.
I'll do my best. I will do my best. Are you ready? Do you have an agenda to look at?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you. Let me put that back up on the screen.
Squirrels is rotten, and there's always papers to look at, and that you can see where we are in the agenda. We're going to turn now to quite an extensive report of library updates. Just look what we've got to talk about: statewide freeze, fines and fees, library operation updates, reopening plans. And I think what will be good is that if you're not sure what some of this is, you will over time get more comfortable with what some of the things are that Adrian's talking about. So we've allotted, if we look at the agenda, we've given ourselves 15 minutes to talk about it. But I think if Adrian needs more time, we're going to let her have it, because then right after that, we need to talk about, furthering the discussion about strategic focusing. I really don't know what else could come up. Maybe while we're meeting, there'll be a new agenda item. We're going to hear from Renee, who is our counselor liaison. And then, if we need to, there may be a citizen who wants to submit a comment, but I haven't heard that we have one.
I have not received any.
Yeah, is trying to, get in and talk to us and stuff. They would have had to send an email saying that they want to send comment, and we would have had to have it 24 hours in advance, which is fair. And then I think we're trying to adjourn at 5:30. Does that sound like our plan?
Yes, okay.
Thank you. And then if you don't know, our group follows the Robert's Rules of Order, and I'm holding it in my left hand, and I will do my best, but it isn't something that I've done recently, so it will be something that we get smoother at as time goes by. Okay, let's begin. Adrian?
Thank you, Jane. And Jane had, I think, about 2 hours of notice that she was going to be potentially facilitating this meeting.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So for library updates, so I mentioned briefly about the statewide freeze. So assuming everybody knows about that and how it's affecting a number of agencies, it didn't necessitate that libraries across the state had to close. What's happening is that different communities are responding differently depending on how the cases are in those communities. And so public libraries that were in communities with less COVID case or fewer COVID cases had their doors open to the public have gone back to just curbside. Here in our area, Multnomah County closed their curbside and all in-person services just this week. For Washington County, so far we're the only library that has actually closed our curbside services the way that they were operating. So it had been for a while now that you could come to the Pine Street entrance. There would be a table there. Staff would help patrons, whether they had an appointment or not, to get any holds that had come in. And that part, the public facing part, was deemed very safe. It's still safe. It still technically could be happening. And the other libraries so far in the county are doing some version of that. Maybe not on their front porch, maybe in their lobby. In Sherwood, because of the size of our staff being very small and our workroom being very small and being consistent with the rest of the city departments, that and using the guidance from the city manager and the senior leadership team and approval from council and the mayor, we've closed our curbside services. But what we are doing is we still have staff on site. We're trying to be as nimble as possible to still get those books in people's hands, that if they had an appointment, many people have already been contacted today. If they had an appointment on Wednesday, they were contacted to see would they like to pick up their book or books or movies or whatever it is another way, and staff are taking things out to their cars or 6 feet away, so on. But what it does is we're trying to take those appointments that we had, and instead of having them in 16 hours in 4 condensed spots through the week, is spread those appointments out throughout the week more, so that it takes fewer staff to be on site at the same time. And then that allows us to have more staff either working from home or working in a different area of the library, or we may spread people out into evening shifts. A lot of this we're still figuring out. But basically today went well. Some people did come pick up their books, or were pleased to hear from us. We sent out an email blast to almost 500 people yesterday with information, a short version of this. It's on our website as well at sherwoodoregon.gov/library/curbside. And if you got an email yesterday, you could look back at that link today. It's been updated effective, I think about 3 hours ago or so. And so we at the time we first sent it out, we didn't really know our plan yet of how are we going to get books into people's hands. We know we want to, we don't know how. So we added a little bit more about that on the website. We hope to, as we move forward, if this freeze lasts for longer than 2 weeks, we hope to add additional services that we can do that are kind of outside of the library, maybe working with some community partners, possibly with the senior center, or Danny, I'd love to hear your thoughts later on whether the Share Center could be a partner with that, if there's families still coming on site during this time or after this. So, we're trying to retool and rethink how we're doing it all. So it's different than back in the spring when we really closed up shop and went dark for a while. And we all know more about the virus now, and we feel more confident about, how can we stay safe. That's pretty much what I wanted to say here about the freeze. Are there any questions about that part before I move on?
I don't have a question, but I'm going to suggest that while Adrian's talking, that you mute yourself, in case that your dog starts barking or something. That way we don't miss something she says. If you know how to do it.
I think everybody got thumbs up. We have a few IT people, or at least a couple IT people here too. Yeah. And okay, so I'll move on to fines and fees changes. So you've heard me talk about the proposal that started with the WCCLS policy group, which is the library directors at the various member libraries in Washington County. That went to executive board, which is the city managers and the heads of the nonprofits of the member libraries. They approved it, and it went now through the pipeline going up to the county board of commissioners. They heard a presentation about this proposal to stop charging overdue fees. at a work session, which they don't vote on at a work session, but they got to really get into it and read the research and ask the questions and so on. And there was strong support there. And then they will be voting on it soon. I don't have a date for that right now, but I think it's going to come soon. And so the work session was on election day. So it's anticipated that it would pass, and if it does pass, a target launch date is late in January. We have not been charging overdue fees this whole time that we've been closed, and so in terms of the budget, we weren't really expecting to get overdue fees during the closure anyway. I've previously stated how in Sherwood, the library budget, we've been weaning ourselves off of overdue fees for quite a while. Here in Sherwood, a lot of our patrons have shifted to ebooks, which don't have overdue fees, and then WCCLS and member libraries stopped charging overdue fees on youth material. Now it's been about 2 years ago, and so our fine revenue and what we would count on has gone down from the heyday of around $38,000 a year, I think, which still in the big picture of a $1.3 million budget is not that much, and then went down to about $10,000. But what I'm really excited about is that this is looking like it's going to pass, and that the purpose of it is to provide more equity for more people, to make it easier to use the library, to make it easier to talk about books that maybe are overdue, to reduce barriers. And I wanted to point out where you can read more about this if you wanted to. Let me make sure I have actually, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and get the proper thing up on the screen. So the WCCLS Executive Board that met on September 30th, that's when they were approving this before it went to the Board of Commissioners. And so in their meeting packets, which are online, they have the recommendation in there, which is a fairly meaty document, but I wanted to point out a few pieces of it. I will paste the link for that in chat, and then here in just a second, let me share this. Let's see. Do you see recommendation to eliminate overdue fines? Okay. So this is page 7 of the executive board packet, and I think I've sent this or shared this or mentioned this in various ways, but I just wanted to do it again. I'll probably keep doing this, and as we'll eventually have more talking points. But if you're at all thinking like, what, this is not the right thing to do, or this, how is that really going to help? Or if you hear people asking those questions, I'd certainly love to know. I'd like to respond to those concerns or questions. But there's also this really handy literature review that starts on page 3, and it's not very long. Literature reviews are usually quite lengthy. This is about 2 pages. So will patrons return library materials on time without fines? Will patrons practice civic responsibility if we eliminate fines? How do fines affect lower income and historically underserved patrons? And so on. This section I'd really recommend skimming or reading. And there's other information in here as well. But the literature review talks about really trends the last 10 years or so. There's so many libraries across the country that have gone overdue fine free that we can now say more items get returned when libraries don't charge overdue fees. And to clarify too, for us in Washington County, we would still charge for lost books or lost materials and damaged materials. This is really just if items go long overdue. Let's see, I'm going to go back to the agenda, see what else I have there.
I have a question. How long overdue do they have to be before it's considered lost and people have to then buy the book?
I'm going to lean on Crystal here. Is it 21 days, Crystal? I used to know all of these at the back of my hand.
It's 21 days until it goes overdue, and then I think it's another, I don't know, 21 days beyond that before they'll get charged for the full cost of the item.
Okay, thanks.
One moment, please. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. Any other questions about the overdue fine-free proposal.
Could I ask a question?
Mhm.
Even though, we're in the middle of a pandemic and so forth, don't you think that this was going to be going forward anyway? That there was a lot of interest in it and the different librarians were researching it? This isn't in response to the pandemic. This is because this was the way we were going.
Yes, I think that's true. I think the pandemic expedited the conversation. This
Okay.
probably would have been happening a year from now instead of now. And it just made sense since that was the trajectory anyway, it's really considered a best practice and more libraries are doing it. And Multnomah County has gone to fine free. And a lot of our patrons use both library systems. It's right here at home. And so, yes, it was on the metaphoric table to discuss. And budget-wise, none of us really thought it would be this budget year. Some of us were thinking, well, it could be, but these things take time. But with the pandemic, yeah, it just made more sense to let's get on this right now. And things have shifted with the county too to really focus on equity issues much more strongly than in the past.
And then, Adrian, I'm going to ask you to comment on this at some point. You know how the board doesn't technically, this advisory board doesn't technically adopt policies? The city does, but this board can approve policies, meaning that they support it. This was very hard for me to understand. So at some point, if it comes into your conversation, please review that.
Sure. So that's an important distinction. It wouldn't affect that this proposal is not a policy, or any policies that come out of it will be WCCLS policies, not Sherwood policies. But let's say I'm trying to think if there would be a trickle down effect on one of our policies. Maybe not directly, but if there's our patron-related and catalog-related policies related to like having a library card, who gets a library card, when do we charge money, how long are things due for, when does it go lost, things about confidentiality and privacy, all these kind of big picture, what does it mean to have a library card and use a library system, those are all WCCLS policies, or that's where they're kept. And then each member library has policies more for what happens in the library or to cover local decisions.
Okay.
Sorry, my son just said something to me that I couldn't hear him, and then he left. I think it's all good. Hello, YouTube. I think my son's all right. So let's say there was a policy for our collection development policy, which we went through recently. That's a local decision because we use City of Sherwood funds, City of Sherwood Public Library staff are selecting books for our local collection, and we use that policy to guide our work. And then staff worked on policy drafts, mostly me with staff input, and brought it to the board and went back and forth. City attorney looked at it. And then when it was all finally done, then this body at that time made a motion to, is it approve or is it adopt? It's whichever one your cheat sheet says. I always have to look. Jane, I don't know if you're talking, but you're muted.
Goodness, I got to learn where that button is.
Yeah.
So the advisory board does not technically adopt policies. The city does, but the board can approve policies.
Mm-hmm. Right. So for us in that case, it's really that it went through the channels with my supervisor, and to the extent that the city manager needed to be involved, and the city council doesn't usually get involved in our policies, but they have an opportunity to through Renee, and then the city attorney. So yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah, it's a good recap. It's like, how does a bill become a law kind of thing. We'll revisit that every time we have a policy too. So should I keep talking about updates? I know I'm running over time a little bit. Is that all right? Or anything else about overdue fines?
I think you've covered it.
Okay. Well, let me say a little bit more about library operations and reopening. So library operations, right up until this week, we did launch our book bundles. I think I mentioned that at some of the interviews, perhaps, but the book bundles where people could browse basically through our window, and staff had curated some small bundles of materials, and patrons could walk up and say, "I'd like to check out that bundle, please." And we had some for all ages. It was really successful. We definitely want to keep it up when we can get back to it. And then for reopening, and computer appointments was on hold as we were waiting to hear more about some policies and so on. And of course, we can't do those right now. And then reopening plans, I'm just going to say see statewide freeze, if you're okay with that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions about any of that? Library updates?
Yeah, did you say, Adrian, I'm sorry if I missed this, but I think you said the curbside check-ins are now going to, you're re-looking at that and you're going to make that across the week versus just a couple of set times, allotment times during the week. When are you planning to redo that so people can start picking up their books again?
So we hope to as soon as possible. Right now we're trying to get, we had people who had appointments on Wednesday, but not all of them have gotten their books. And so there were 63 people who had appointments, and we would have probably normally had another 25 or so that would have just shown up for the walk-up. Of the 63 people, not all of them have gotten their books yet. Total through the week, we had 114 appointments. So our priority is to get those 114 people who had appointments, to get them their holds. And then we had 484 total patrons. So if you minus the 114, I can't do that fast enough. 370, is that right? People who had holds but had not made appointments. So our next priority is to reach out to those people. Their holds are in the building. We want to still give them an opportunity to pick them up. We haven't started reaching out to that group yet. We're not going to be intentionally what we call triggering a lot of new holds. There may be some that get checked in, but right now, until we get through these first two priorities, we're not going to be really advertising, hey, place new holds and we'll get it to you. And then we also don't know, is this a 2-week freeze, which is stated at the beginning to be a 2-week freeze, or will it go longer? So it may be that at 2 weeks, if I were to be super optimistic, we can go back to curbside or to curbside in some new form. If I were to be perhaps more realistic, like maybe it will be 4 weeks or longer, and that gives us more time to figure out how can we serve more than those 484 people to get them holds, and also figuring out, can we partner with other organizations? What can we do? What are additional ways we could offer curbside? That's kind of the long answer. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was picking up my curbside holds this week, and somebody was outside just staring at those bundles like, this is such a great idea. They were just oohing and ahhing.
Yay.
So, well done.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, it's gonna be a little tricky as we had a meeting just right at 3:00, and I actually had to leave it early where staff were coming up with ideas to what else can we do? How can we do this? How can we make it better? So, as soon as we know and we've tested it, we'll start to advertise it more. Did I talk right over you, Jane? Or Fritz is raising your hand too. Fritz, you're muted.
There. I just have a quick question about curbside pickups. So I understand Sherwood isn't going to be doing that anymore, but the other libraries are. If a patron desperately wants the books, can they change it where their home library is, say, Tualatin or Tigard or somewhere else, and then arrange to pick up their books at another location?
It's a good question. I know that had been turned off for the bulk of this time during the pandemic, and I know it's been talked about that we could turn it back on. Crystal, I see you unmuted.
Yeah,
do you know the answer?
Yes, I believe it's been turned back on.
Okay. So does that mean a patron can do that on their own account? So if you logged into wccls.org, log into your account, there should be a home library spot there.
Okay.
I would say, I mean, we're not going to advertise that in a big way to do that, as we don't want to send big business, to other staff. But certainly, and there are a number of patrons that use multiple libraries or used to use multiple libraries regularly, or live in one community and work in the other. And yeah.
Yeah. The only reason I'm asking is out in the country here, I mentioned before, a lot of the neighbors are having problems with streaming internet and can't get ebooks. And so if they're used to getting real books, I'll call it, and they can't pick them up if, there's a way to do it. And I am not going to advertise it, but for someone where the only way they can get a book is a hard book, that secret way to do it. Okay.
Yeah, that's good to share. It's really good to share. I don't know the answer yet. I know I want to be able to get books out more. I mean, sometimes I wish we had a bookmobile that we could drive around. We don't, and we've never done that. Or maybe we did decades ago. I don't know the full history on bookmobile in Sherwood, but that's good to know. Thank you, Fritz. Crystal, were you going to say anything? All right, when I see your circle light up, I wonder, did I talk over you? Okay. Anybody else want to advocate for getting books in people's hands for the people that you represent, or anything else you want to say?
Well, I believe we're doing everything that we can, and each day is a new day. And as far as I understand, Washington County and Multnomah County and so forth, we're all connected, as far as these things are concerned. So, yeah,
absolutely.
We've got to just stay flexible.
Yes. Well, that's a good segue, actually. Jean, do you want me to go on to the next topic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to take a look at Lens at Glance. Do you want us to navigate to it, or are you going to tell us?
Let me share a little bit of information first. So as a recap, I'm not sure if everybody, we have new members, and I think I tried to mention this, but I want to do a recap. So our strategic plan that was very detailed and gave us 3 years worth of goals and activities to work through, that expired in 2019. We kept working on it for a while. Our plan was to, in early 2020, to launch a vibrant new strategic planning process that would hopefully get even more community input than our last process. And then, of course, COVID hit. We had some other delays too, mostly on my end, but COVID hit and derailed that. And so rather than try and figure out how to do a strategic plan for 3 years when we, of course, can't plan that far in advance, then this group gave support for, well, let's still be deliberate and strategic, but more with a strategic focus that's shorter term. So that's how we arrived at the strategic focusing phrase, and with the goal of having an iterative process where we'll probably every meeting talk about, well, how's our strategic focusing going, or what needs to be fixed, or something like that. Just can't always keep it on the radar. And it would move back and forth between the board and staff for input and evaluation and so on. I've never done it this way before, so we'll kind of invent it as we go. I appreciate all ideas to make it successful. When I talked about this with staff at a staff meeting, we thought this meeting, actually this discussion piece, would be at the October meeting, which was canceled, and it actually made a lot more sense to wait until we had a fuller board. Granted, a lot of you are new, and you may be thinking like, "You're day one, and you're asking me to talk about your strategic focus?" Okay, everybody, like roll up our shirt sleeves and get into it. But so staff at an October meeting talked about this. That was, of course, before the freeze. So just keep that in mind. And I'll show you a couple of things. Let's see. So we had this brainstorming meeting. I asked people, I'll get the right thing up. I asked people if you could, let's make sure I say the right thing. The 3 things we need to be working on. So this was a time before we had started the book bundles. It was a time before before we had started print pickup, which we now do. One moment. I think this will. Do you see a word cloud with book bundles in the middle? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, it's right there. Looks
so
good.
this was from that staff discussion. So it's just very loose, brainstorming. And then what I did is I put things in categories and, lumped stuff where there was repetition together. And so I'll stop sharing that and I'll show you. I don't have a pretty version. I just plopped things into Excel, but I will show you that here too. And then I've added a few things that were less formally collected, but from staff input, either from me saying, hey, we needed to do this, or discussions with staff. Do you see a very exciting blue table on your screen now? But, yeah, okay. So this is all this B column where it says staff suggestions. This is everything that you saw in the word cloud, subtracting out some things that were really just more logistics or more vague, like safety. I mean, I feel like that's an umbrella over everything we're doing right now, so I didn't want to include it here. And then I categorize things. The ones that I added during the freeze are up here at the top. So reinventing holds curbside delivery, partnering with the Senior Center for Book Delivery, partnering with other organizations for book delivery, keeping the book drops open. I mean, that maybe seems simple, but we have to have staff there every day to be able to empty them and check them in and quarantine and all of that. So just keeping things going. And then the next category I have is access to technology. So that's the tech help. We used to do tech help appointments in the building where someone could meet with a librarian for usually 30 to 60 minutes and get one-on-one assistance with something. It might be someone who really needed hand-holding to get an email account set up, or how do they get Libby or Overdrive working for their ebooks access, or anything. It doesn't have to be a library service. Of course, we haven't been doing that really. We've been working some remote, some phone, but we really aren't set up to do screen sharing from a distance. And the people who need the help the most don't really want to have to screen share to be able to get their help. And so that's what I'm saying. There's significant barriers to this one. We're not getting a ton of questions about it, but I think that's because people assume like the answer is no. Whereas we used to do quite a bit of this. And then, and let me pause actually. So the point of me sharing this and for you to soak this in is to figure out, we can't do all things. And if we were to pick a few things, maybe 2 or 3 things, and put them in priority order, and we can revisit this list and add to the list and maybe make the list look a little prettier. But what would we pick, at the end of today, at the end of this meeting, if you could be thinking, what are the things that you think would make the biggest impact? I should have said that at the beginning. So, and then computer appointments, still on access to technology, computer appointments, that's when people used to be able to come in and use the internet computers. They had Word and Excel and all of that. Some people would do gaming, some people would do homework, they might do job applications, whatever. They didn't necessarily need staff help. Sometimes they had some staff questions, but mostly they just needed a computer and they needed internet access. And we haven't been able to do that. We were getting pretty close, but then with the freeze, we're shutting things down. So we have heard kind of anecdotally that there's a high need for that. Some from our patrons, some from like Fritz with you saying, internet access is definitely an issue. It's different than perhaps wanting to come into the library and use somebody else's computer and be exposed. So there's still the other need. Offering internet access is on here. That one, I don't know which staff person put it on there. This one's tricky because while it's really a high need, it's outside of our immediate control in the library. There is internet. It's always been there. It's technically available. outside the building as well. It's through Sherwood broadband. The signal's not great depending on where you are. So I know that it's not necessarily the answer if someone doesn't have internet access to hang out in their car and try and get a really good signal from Sherwood broadband. It's also available at other city buildings and locations. But it's harder for us to do that. We are working on buying hotspots. We haven't actually purchased them yet, but we hope to circulate, is it 10 hotspots, 11 hotspots? I think it's 10 in our Library of Things collection this fiscal year. But these things are, anytime you try and circulate something that doesn't normally fit in a book drop or something, like it has to be protected, it has to be, all the parts have to be labeled. It takes a while. I don't want to make promises that it's going to be next month. It's going to take us a while, but that's our goal. So that could fall into that category. Any questions so far? I'm just scrolling through. Okay. So then, let's see, the next category is the collection. And by collection, I mean the library collection, like all of our books and everything that we check out, everything that's on the shelves, not the e-books, which is a county level collection. So we have a really popular Library of Things collection, which I think I've talked to all of you about. That's going to have tools and electronic devices and some crafting things and games, and some of them relate to STEM, like the science, technology, engineering, math items. Some of them are more recreational and fun. There is definitely an evening of the playing field to have a Library of Things collection to let people who maybe don't have the money or resources to buy all the gadgets that everybody's expected to know how to use these days, and be able to check those out. A lot of people had them checked out, and I think since all of them, or most all of them, have been returned, but we're not checking out them again, and they quarantine differently, so that's kind of a big issue. I'm not sure if anybody in the county is checking it. For a while, nobody was checking out their Library of Things, but that maybe is easier to figure out once we open our doors, but probably before, once we have curbside up in a real way or something. So that's what that's about. This one is for when we do open our doors. We probably won't let people all the way into the full stacks and browse and touch stuff, at least at the very beginning. It would probably be more like a lobby type thing. Come get your holds and have just kind of like the grocery store. There's the gum. Do you want to buy a tiny bag of chips? Would you like to buy one or check out one of these new books that's on display right by the self-checkout, and try and bring some things forward. So that's relatively easy. It's off the plate for now since we're not open. The book bundles, which was on this list but has already been accomplished, but now is on hold, kind of substitutes for that. Also in the collection, we could promote magazines. Those are tricky to find. Our current issues we used to have on display in the library. The current issue for that month was only for library use only. We've changed that so they can check out now, but it's really tricky to find how to place them on hold. You have to go to the old catalog, I want to call it the legacy catalog. Crystal, what do we call it? Is that the right word? The original?
Is it the classic catalog?
The classic catalog? Is that what it says? Like if you're on the new catalog, which has been around for over 2 years now, I think. Thank you, Crystal. If you wanted to go back to the older one, there should be an option to do it. And then you search your magazine and you find the current issue, and then you can place it on hold. Like, who is going to try and do that? Not very many people. But yet people love magazines, and we spend a lot of money on them, and we want to get them in people's hands. We were doing some through the book bundles, and maybe this is a low priority thing, but that's why it's on the list, is promoting magazines. And
it's
then
the alternate catalog.
Alternate, thank you. Not old, not dusty. All right. Thank you, Crystal. All right. And then I gave these a category of education. There are two that are kind of related. So homeschoolers, like the official homeschoolers, people who are not enrolled in the public school, who are doing it on their own, often use the library for a lot of support. And we've updated our website. We've made it more robust for the homeschooling section. We could do a better job of promoting. That could also fit under marketing. I think in general, we could do better with a lot of marketing of a lot of things that we do. But I'm also not hearing that they're reaching out to us with questions. I think homeschoolers are pretty resilient and have a lot of resources. We're not the only, service that can help them too. So I don't know where that falls in the priorities if we don't have time to do everything, right? And then for people who are enrolled in the public schools or schools, not doing homeschool, private or public, but they're doing remote learning from home, do they need our help? And again, we've updated the website with some things. We have a kids portal and a family section on there. It's not getting used a ton, and we promoted it back in the spring more when people were first switching to distance learning, and I suppose we could re-promote it again more. So that's why that's on here. And then marketing, maybe I should put, I feel like education could also go into marketing. I'm not sure, but advertising the collection, advertising anything, just marketing. Right now we advertise the collection and other services and our online programs, mainly through our e-newsletter, also through social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our website at sherwoodoregon.gov. And then we're also cross-posting a lot of things on the WCCLS events page. But I'm sure there's more we could be doing. We used to have a print newsletter that went to about 300 people a month. I've been writing for the Sherwood Archer, but I haven't had time to write for the Gazette. I probably should have handed that off to somebody else on staff, and I keep thinking I'm going to do it this time, and I haven't been. So I think there's a lot of room for marketing more, but then we are a small staff, so it's hard to fit everything in. And then the last category I called welcoming patrons. Right now we're answering a lot of patron questions, but it always feels like we're not doing enough. We have staff on site who are answering the phone or returning messages. We also have a number of staff who have city-issued cell phones these days, and we're returning calls if they're voicemail. Usually people don't answer those calls because it says it's an unlisted number, so it's not, a perfect system. And then, of course, email. We were doing some limited in-person patron questions at Curbside, but not a lot, and certainly not close. And we have set up for doing video help, but I don't think anybody took us up on that. So that's what that is. And then browsing the collection, again, for when we open the doors. This was on here. I didn't take it off. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I know customer service is, obviously it's important. It's about everything we do, but it's not specific enough for me to really explain why it ended up on the list, and I didn't have an opportunity to ask about that. So that is that list. And let me, on my own, I'm going to toggle back to the agenda real quick and just.
Yeah, I want to play timekeeper a little bit so that I think I heard you say you want some input from us about these priorities, and then we want to hear from our counselor, and open ended questions that might come up. So does that sound fair?
Are you asking me? Everybody?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So we have like 17 minutes or so on this topic. So I guess I'd add that what I'd like to do is I'd like to hear from people if you have some top picks from that list, and it's okay if it's not 3, but we could kind of go down and see. Maybe if we do a round, excuse me, I think we have enough time to do a round robin for each person to say just thoughts, or if you only have one that's like, I don't know about the rest, I didn't have enough time to review it, but this one stood out to me. Like, that's fine too. But then if you keep in mind the equity lens, here's my son. Hold on, buddy. Still in the meeting.
Hi.
Okay, you are on YouTube now.
Yes.
Okay, I will be back in just one moment.
Yes. This will give you a chance to look at this list.
Okay,
It's the same at the school.
Sorry about that. Okay, so I think if I make this smaller so you can see more of it, is that too small?
No, I think people can see it. Yeah.
You can make it smaller, I think, Adrian. Yeah.
I
See that?
can see.
Is that too small, or does that work?
Not for me. How about somebody else?
Okay. I'm seeing everybody. You all have better vision than I do, I think. Where'd my glasses go? Where are they? There they are. Okay. So
I think it's great that the staff is meeting and talking, because they're hearing, what people are thinking about. And I think all the thing about maintaining phone lines and answering people's questions, the email, staying in contact with the patrons is pretty high on my list. So I would comment that way.
Oh, wait. So, Jane, I want to make sure that, let me add a column here. I'm going to say board feedback.
Well, the first thing I said is I think it's great that your staff, you led them through a discussion so they can let you know what they're hearing. The word on the street is, whatever it is, and you're hearing about it. And, the library is the living room of our community, and we can't go, So, dealing with people and their questions and so forth, it's very supportive. It really helps people. So I would move the one that says patron questions, currently phone, email, and limited in person. I would make it higher, but you also have to have staff and, have things organized.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want pulled up to the top, Jane, for your priorities?
Well, I just want you to know that I learned to read digital books, and I consider that groundbreaking. I fought it every step of the way, and I did because it benefited my granddaughter and other people in my life. And I can't tell you how fun it is that I know how to read a digital book, and use Libby and all these things. So whatever you have to do to keep those things finely tuned, so that people can access them. Our collection is phenomenal. What we have available to borrow, it's amazing. You just have to learn to do it.
Thank you, Jane. Does anybody else feel ready to respond with what you would pick as priorities?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well, go ahead, Stephen. Is it Stephen?
No, it's me, Trust. Yeah, Bish. So I just want to add to what Jane was mentioning about digital books. And when I moved to Sherwood a couple of years ago, I didn't have much exposure to the library as such, but then I did find out about Libby app, and then I connected to Washington library system, right? And I was able to read a lot of books, actually. I'm not a huge book reader, but I would say with digital books, I've certainly read quite a lot of books that I was surprised by myself with what I did. I guess one thing that I would love to do, probably from a Sherwood Library perspective, is to find a way to market these kind of information or put that information out to the users, or have a quick flyer or something that shows people how to connect digitally, find books digitally, and then be able to read books digitally as well. And as just reading through one of these topics, what I feel is point number 4, which is partnering with Senior Center, should be at a higher priority, only because of the cases that we see and how vulnerable senior citizens are. I think it would make sense for us to find a way to partner with them and then be able to deliver books or help them whatever they need from a library support perspective, whether it's helping them connect digitally through their phones or Kindle app or whatever that they use, right, on their phones or laptops. I think it would really benefit and help them at this stage. That's my 2 cents. I think that's all I had.
Yes, thank you. I want to make this.
You might not be aware that the senior center is delivering meals all over the community, and it's possible that book delivery can somehow be included, and I don't know that, but we have a senior citizen advisory board, and maybe they're talking about some of those things as well.
Yeah, we've been talking about that with city staff, and that the members who are getting meals often ask for books from the senior center's book collection. That's a very popular request. Anybody else feel ready to share priorities?
I can go, Adrienne. It's Melanie. My priorities would be distribution, which kind of is a lump thing for the curbside and the book delivery. So that's several in one, but just getting the books to people, whatever that looks like, would be priority number one for me. And then I think the second one, and it's because I'm just, we're distance learning as so many other people are right now at home, it sounds like you already have the remote learning help, but you mentioned potentially doing more promotion for that. Even, if there's a way to partner with schools. I mean, we all get the weekly newsletters that go out from the different schools. If it's possible to partner with the schools and let people know what those remote learning help opportunities are, I think that would be great. And then my third one would be, and it's already outside of your control, so it would just be the internet access, but it doesn't sound like that's really a possibility, and that goes back more to the school, to those that don't have reliable internet for school.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't remember if I've shared this with this group or not. The Sherwood Center for the Arts, a department of the city, is partnering with the school district. There are a few families who, the school, if they didn't have reliable internet at home, the school district tried to provide a hotspot. If they live somewhere where the hotspot doesn't work, even then, there are families who are being referred through the school district to the Center for the Arts to use internet on site there.
Good.
And I think that that's still happening. It's a very small number of people. I think they started with one family, and there might be a couple of other families that are going that route. It's kind of like the last, option. And then they stay there during the school day, the whole family, and get their business done, and then leave. So,
can I add to that?
Yeah.
So I believe they've stopped offering it during the freeze.
Okay.
So, once again, that's another reason why there's a way to have more if there was a way to have an outdoor router in the parking lot of the library or something like that, or just a way to expand the range or the strength of the Sherwood broadband, I feel like that would be really useful, especially during the freeze.
That's good to know, Lily. Thank you. I'm kind of merging Melanie and Lily, your comments. Lily, do you want to keep talking? Yep.
I also agree with having focusing on distribution as a higher priority, but other than that, I agree with everyone else who said stuff so far.
Okay. Super. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Fritz?
I'd like to make another comment on the access to technology. Is that out in the rural area where I am, is that we're having to use radio waves from the nearby hills to get all of our access. A lot of it is really erratic, and we can't use Overdrive or Libby because we just can't get the words fast enough, onto our devices. So I'm wondering, maybe I could go to my internet provider, who's Online Northwest, which is located in a tower on top of Chehalem Ridge up on Bold Peak, to contact them and see if they're having any questions from any of their customers regarding getting books on, books remotely, and see if they're just having questions, on that. And maybe there's some more information we can find. We do, as mentioned before, we don't have control over what they do, but if they don't seem to have a problem with it, we can look at it other ways. Like if somebody's having problems, they'd have to buy a Kindle and then download, use a Kindle to deliver the books like I have to do. I can't use my regular MacBook Pro. I can only use a Kindle. So get my remote books.
Mm. And Fritz, are you using the library's collection?
Yes.
But watching or reading them on the Kindle. That's good to know.
I had to buy a Kindle in order to read it because I couldn't read it on my device.
Oh gosh. That's a dedicated reader. Yeah.
It turns out that Online Northwest is my service provider as well, and I live a block and a half from the library. So I think we should all call them. Say, what can you do? Because we need you, to pull up the amps or, whatever it needs to be done.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure, this hasn't come up before. Is there anything in terms of city protocol about board members contacting businesses and, with the city business? And
right.
I mean, I think like if you're a customer and you're just like, I'm just curious kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I could do it as a customer.
Right.
I mean, I use Online. They were just down at my house a month ago. They had to put up a new dish up in a tree, 65 feet in a tree, 300 feet down the driveway. Wow. And then run a cable from the tree to my roof to get the radio waves from Bold Peak. So, yeah, I could call them after that experience.
Yeah, they know you.
Yeah, they know me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to know what they'd say. I'm not sure what we could do with the information, but it would be a nice data point, just to know, are people calling and trying to get troubleshooting help with them.
Right.
Where does that leave us? So let's see, I got, for my note taking, Fritz, you were talking about it, but I wrote myself a little note off to the side. But so would I put for you, do you feel like it's really internet access? Is that where you would put your vote?
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Internet access for rural patrons.
Okay.
And I think that fits in with equity, equalizing access. The young people that can't get in, people out in the country. We've got a lot of hills and trees and, so our rural, Sherwood geography. And I'm going to look at the clock again. It's 5:12 because if we go over, we need to have a motion to do so, and we have other things on our agenda.
We don't need a motion, Jean, for that.
Okay.
Yeah, not to go over like the budget committee does. They don't. I think we can fit it in with the tiny wiggle room since we don't have any public comments. But we haven't heard. Let's see, Stephen, Danny. I think you're the last two,
Sure.
And Renee, if you wanted to,
Yeah, I'll chime in. So yeah, just more generally, I'm glad to see just sort of what I've been seeing in the business environment right now. A lot of organizations that typically do long-term strategic planning are moving to shorter term or even sort of no strategic planning, like a lot of sort of startup strategies. So, this sort of co-creation with users is really important. And I think it's great that we have a list here, but I think just a general statement of having sort of a clear sense of affordable loss, right? So some of these, since they're creative, may, know when to cut bait on them. And then sometimes even better, taking it instead of trying to craft goals, just take a look at your resources and see what means you have at your disposal versus trying to do goals, right? So what can we do with what we have versus trying to achieve certain goals? That being said, right, within this, I am very much the equity piece was very much on my mind, right? So I think the distribution is really important. I'm very glad to hear that new people are using the digital things as sort of a forcing function. But it would be, to me, with the reinvent curbside delivery, how do we do that equitably, and how can we move people that could who have access or have the ability to use digital assets? How do we pivot them to that service who may be using delivery? Because my understanding when we've spoken in the past that can be quite limited, right? The resources there are limited. So I don't know if it's including marketing or increased tech support, offering people to some incentive or just education who are currently receiving delivery to try to pivot them to digital assets. So that's my thoughts on this.
Okay. So thank you, Sue. I want to make sure I capture. I'm still trying to write and think at the same time. But so would it be? Are you kind of saying it's a little bit of reinventing Hold's curbside delivery? It's a little bit of marketing, and it's more perhaps analysis is not the right
I think
word.
I think the multivariable equation I'm trying to optimize in my head is how do we get as much material into as many people's hand as equitably as possible, right? So I think it's as many people that can access digital, use digital, and people who can't for whatever reasons, where they live, the means they have at their disposal, whatever, right? Those are the people that we try to use the curbside delivery for.
Thank you. I'm making a mental note. Come back and re-listen to this whole section and take more notes. Like, I'm not going to try and capture it all. Those are really good points. And as usual, you tend to you give us these big chunks of information that kind of changes the let's say like not quite a paradigm shift, but deep thinking, like what's the right tool for this job and so on. I appreciate that, and everybody's priorities so far too. This is really useful. Anything else, Stephen? Did I cut you off? No. Okay. Danny, last but not least, would you like to share?
I feel like everything got touched on. I think I would just be repeating everything, but the top two for me would be the advertising of the remote learning help. I do think would be really important for all of our parents and caregivers. And the Sherwood School District does put out like a family newsletter, or parent and family newsletter. So it's something that could be put in the big district newsletter, but then it could also probably be put into the individual school weekly announcements that go out. And then I really like what Vishwas said about coming up with some sort of a flyer to help people navigate accessing the digital resources through like Libby. Because I think I take for granted that navigating that's really quick and easy for me, but if we could kind of help people walk through that a little bit, we'll just make that more accessible for them. Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Vishwas, I didn't catch that part about a flyer the first time when you were talking. I don't know if you can see my notes, but I put that under marketing. Is that what you're saying, to have a printed flyer that we could hand out, like with the book delivery, for example, or curbside?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And also, one of the things that I've seen in the past, I think in one of the libraries while I was in California, was every book had like a little cheat sheet kind of things where on how they can connect digitally in case they're not able to find books in physical, right, at the library. So things like that we could certainly think of how we can market our stuffs.
That's a good idea. We have a bunch of great print stuff that we used to give to people all the time, and we haven't been giving very much of that out these days. So we wouldn't necessarily have to, invent some new flyer. We'll just use what we have. Good ideas. Was there anything? Does anybody see anything that like has their name attached that I need to correct? Did I get it? Okay, then.
If people have an idea, will you accept an email, Adrian?
Yes, of course. Yeah, and we'll talk about this. We'll just keep talking about this every month. Yeah. Renee, do you want to weigh in on this part?
Sure. I didn't realize my camera was off.
It was on up until just then. It went off for a second. And back on.
Okay. I think I'm probably with the majority here. I'm looking at the delivery piece, how to distribute in an equitable fashion. I like the where did they go? The offering the internet access again. I'm thinking more equitable and how we can affect. I'm thinking rural. I'm thinking the people who don't have the economic means. So I think that's an important one. And then I think as our demographics continue to age, partnering with the senior center or some of our older adults in some capacity, I think is going to be important as well. So I would broaden that just a bit beyond the senior center, but for our older adults in general to tap into that resource.
Thank you. This is so helpful, everyone. I really appreciate this. I'm going to clean it up, make it, different document, and as staff, we can look at it and then bring it to the next meeting. If you have any ideas or suggestions in the meantime, feel free to email me, or if it's long-winded, you want to just leave me a voicemail, go ahead and call and just talk. And I'll get that from home as well. Sometimes that's easier. All right, super. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll stop sharing this, and then the agenda, get that back up. So that leads us onto the next topic. Why is that not sharing? There we go. Okay. Madam Vice Chair, would you like to move us on to the next topic?
Yes, I think we want to hear from Renee, our counselor.
Well, I don't have a lot to share. We did have a meeting last night. Our work session was actually longer than the council meeting itself, but we are discussing urban growth boundaries. So how do we want Sherwood to grow, and when is the right time for that growth? We have the opportunity to ask Metro for some land to come into the urban growth boundary next year, and that could be residential. But we as a council, one of our goals is to bring more property in that we could do some commercial and light industrial, so we can diversify the tax base. So that's a major conversation right now. And what that means is that there's property on the west side and the north side that can be brought in. There is a group that wants to develop the north side. That's over by Home Depot in that area and across the street, which could be some commercial property as well as a big box type of a store and some other businesses that go in there. So that's a conversation right now. We are looking at attainable housing, and what does that mean for the city of Sherwood? We're in the middle of a comprehensive plan. So you may have participated in the survey about attainable housing. Mm-hmm. It would be interesting to hear some of your feedback about that. Again, as Sherwood continues to grow, the demographics that are growing the quickest will be our citizens that are aging and wanting to live in smaller places, or still stay in Sherwood and be able to afford to live in Sherwood. And then we have our young families or our millennials that are looking to start buying homes or are graduating from college or on their pathway to professional jobs, and they too want to live in Sherwood, and finding places is difficult. So that's a conversation that we're having. We had a housing and needs analysis that has been done, lots of good data back from that. So it's an interesting conversation as someone who looks to the future and thinks about those two populations, and also works with homeless families. I'm very, very interested in diversifying the housing base. So it's a fun conversation. A couple of other things that we're working on are the sign codes. So there's been some conversation about, specifically, we call them feather signs, and changing our code a little bit. We keep pushing it back because if we change the code, then it's going to affect our businesses, and businesses they're struggling right now. We don't want to impact them even more than what they're already impacted. So we've pushed that back until probably March, and we'll see what happens there. And the other big topic that's coming back is the idea of chickens in the city. And we were supposed to be talking about that in the next meeting, but we're actually probably going to push that back into January. But there are many citizens in our community that would like for us to loosen the restrictions of backyard chickens, or chickens in the city limits. So that's going to be a topic coming up as well. And of course, the election took place, and we have the recreational marijuana sales that could go into place. So we've been talking about that and what that's going to look like within the city of Sherwood. So some hot topics, interesting topics, and lots of opportunities to create a different vision for our community.
No roosters, please.
I can guarantee that would not be a part of it. If you have any questions, let me know.
How do you like to receive questions, Renee?
I'm open. Whatever the best mode of communication is for you, just
okay.
Yeah. However, I have 3 different emails. You can text me. You can call me. We can schedule a meeting. Whatever works best.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, as tempting as it might be to start having an email conversation among all of us, it isn't something we can do because it turns into a meeting. And that was something that was very hard for me to understand. I thought, well, let's just all get together and talk. No, it becomes a meeting. And so you could send a comment to Adrian, something that's of concern to you, or you could send something to Renee, who knows about things, but we can't all start chatting. So that was a tough one for me. So
I'm glad you brought that up, Jane. I didn't include that in the onboarding, and I should have. I usually will say it if I send an email where I'm asking for feedback, or I think that people might give it anyway. I will usually try and remember to say, like, please don't reply all,
Yeah.
And if it's just something like, yay, I love this, or something, more just like casual. What do I want to say? I mean, it's not that every single reply all would be bad. It's just that the danger of crossing that line is there. So we just say, please don't reply all. Yeah. If people want to say, I would like to say one thing. When we do adjourn, and Mark is on the line for IT to close off the streaming, if people want to stay on for just a moment longer, I could ask you a question about the next meeting. It's not part of the agenda, but I wanted to ask about, since normally you do get to mingle before and after a meeting when we would be on site together, I wanted to ask you a question to try and substitute for that.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want me to bring us to a close?
I don't have anything else. I'm really appreciative that everybody's here and so engaged. It's awesome. Well, thank you. So I think you could go ahead and adjourn the meeting then, Jane.
Okay, I'm ready. I don't think we have any unfinished business definitely to take up at the next meeting. I don't think we need a special meeting. Randy will be interested to hear what all we talked about and so forth. I think we hit all our important announcements, and I will say that the meeting is adjourned at 5:29.
Thank you, Jane.